That sounds like you're talking about condoms.
Tesseract podcast number something 8, maybe. Today I'm talking with my lovely bandmate and brother in rhythm, Amos Williams.
Hello.
How are you doing, Amos Williams?
I'm cool. It's dark here. And actually it gets really dark here because they turn the street lights off at 11 and there's no ambient light whatsoever. So it's really dark here. I'm guessing where you are, it's what, 2 p.m., 3 p.m.?
Coming up to 2. Just so that people know what we're talking about. We, Tesseract, are not a band that like to settle in one place.
No, not at all.
I am in Austin, in America, in Texas, and you are somewhere in the south of France, aren't you?
Not quite the south of France, although we're exceedingly close. We're just north of Provence, in a part of the world called Auvergne, which is gorgeous. It's on the La Loire River, and it's kind of high up. It's not quite Alp mountains, but it's still pretty cool. And like it was 21, 22 degrees the other day, and then it snowed the next day. So it's kind of shows you where we're at. But it's going to be awesome in the summer. I hope so anyway.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I mean, I bet you've got some pretty amazing views of the night sky where you are.
Yeah, seriously, I can lie in bed and look at the whole of Orion. For about 3 hours, it just passes by my window, and it's quite cool. The only problem is either side of Orion, there's quite a gap. So it looks like there's nothing. Then all of a sudden, this dude comes across, shows his belt for, a few hours, and then he's gone. But it's quite something because I've grown up in massive megacities, and there's never any darkness, full stop. So to now be in a point where I can't see my hand in front of my face if I'm walking outside and there's no moon is insane. But it's quite nice as well. I find it really interesting. I find it really intriguing, and it adds a certain peace, which is interesting. I do kind of miss the big city now. It's a bit odd, but I guess I grew up in that.
This is the first time I've lived anywhere that is really a big city, because I can, even though I think Wolverhampton has city status, I can tell you it is not a big city.
No.
But going back to what you just said about it being peaceful, living where you are now, I can totally associate with that. I lived in Wales for a little while before moving out to Austin, and it was just over the border from Shrewsbury, a little tiny place called Crew Green, and we lived in a cottage there, and it was so quiet and lovely. But it was one of those things that for a fairly short amount of time, it's really lush.
I get it.
But after in our case, 9 months, which isn't a long time to spend in a house that you've bought, it's like, we've been on holiday for 9 months now. And I think I'd really like that in later life. Yeah. I mean, I'd still honestly go back for a couple of weeks here and there if it was a holiday rental type thing, but there comes a certain peace with living in a place where it's super, super quiet and you have got amazing views out of all windows. It's just endless fields and wildlife and open skies at night, no light pollution. You can hear running water, and that's about it. I've
found it very inspiring. At the same time, when I had a megacity outlook as well, when I was overlooking the center of Shanghai and just looking at the lights at night, that was also very inspiring. So perhaps it's just having something outside the window that's unusual or interesting beyond your normal everyday, like a million lights like it is in Shanghai, or a million lights in the sky like it is here. Perhaps it's twinkly lights that I find inspiring more than anything.
Maybe. Twinkly lights like a Nocturne video.
Yeah.
Oh, that's going back a way. So
That's true.
Okay, I've got some questions prepared because I try to do things professionally. So I want to go right back to the very beginning with you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the first question is, what made you choose bass guitar?
See, that's an odd one because my memory of it is that it was kind of a mistake. But then I've got a very precise memory on a lot of things, but sometimes massive details like that are perhaps it's a non-truth, but I seem to remember I was listening to things like Guns N' Roses in the late 80s. Fuck. You should never, ever be able to have a conversation and say, well, in the late 80s.
James can say in the late 70s. Well, no, he probably can't, but...
He definitely shat himself in the late 70s, yeah.
And in the early 2020s.
This is true. So I remember listening to Guns N' Roses and things like Iron Maiden and heavy metal in the late 80s and thinking that this really cool, as I would call it now, big, saturated, overdriven sound. For some reason in my little head, I imagined that was the bass guitar because I knew what a guitar was. I knew that the lead guitar was playing high notes and things like that, but me being a bit special and thick in the 80s, I considered that the bass guitar was doing the other thing. So I picked that up and quickly found out I was wrong. Although, now it's the fashion to have an exceedingly overdriven and saturated sound. So maybe I was right. I was just looking into the future. Who knows?
You were miles ahead of your time.
Yeah, but at the time, bass was kind of only distorted if you were doing something wrong. But now we live in a world of freedom where bass can be distorted. So yes, the world changed for me, which was nice for it. Nice of it.
That's so good. I love that the reason you play bass is
because I thought it was distorted.
Misinformation.
Yeah, I put 2 and 2 together and got 3.
I love it. I had to ask that first because it's such a nice starting point.
It kind of sets the tone for me as a bass player,
It just sets a wonderful tone. So, okay. I was contacted a couple of months back by a fan on Instagram, and he asked me about my reasons for playing drums, like how I chose it as my career, or even if I chose it as my career, if it just happened, kind of thing. Yeah. And I asked this question to Mike Mallion the other day, but my answer to that question, I posted it in a blog post because I felt that it might reach and help more people than me just replying to him on Instagram. I might be able to go a bit more in depth and put it out there.
Makes sense.
And I think it's a good question to ask podcast guests because everyone's probably going to have either a very similar answer or a very different answer. Mike's was kind of along the same lines as me, but he went a little deeper. But my answer was basically that my parents were very supportive of me growing up, and I was therefore just enabled to have this creative freedom, and I didn't see any limitations within that when it was presented to me as a career option, or maybe it wasn't even presented to me as a career option. It was more, you can do this if you want. So I was wondering what your experience of that was like as well. Do you always know that you were going to be a musician, or has it been a conscious decision or effort or something? Like what?
I've never
Where's it come from for you?
specifically consciously chosen a path. The interesting thing is that I have been a part of performances in very early life, and it became very normal and natural for me, and something that I felt I had to do, even at a really early age. Like, there's photos of me performing before I can remember, so I don't remember those even the specific years that the photos are taken of me. Now, that may be due to my condition more than it my being super young, but I was also super young, and I'm right at the front performing in front of people at like the Royal Festival Hall in London. So I was always doing something musically. So it just felt that I had to. There's always an empty space if I'm not performing. It's like if you have a conversation with Akil and ask a similar question, he may say, and you're talking about the topic of performance, he may say that he actually prefers being in the studio and writing than he does to touring. And that is a very alien concept to me, because performance is about sharing and experiencing something together with the people in that room. And we're super lucky that we get to have that experience everywhere throughout this world. There are very few countries where we don't have an audience that is wanting us to play there. You know, even Africa, there are places in Kenya where we have some fans, and for us to be able to share what we do and to experience how they enjoy and consume the music that we're sharing is something that is very rare in life for a lot of people. I think, having spoken to a few people that aren't musicians, that they find what we do alien. And I honestly find the life where you don't have this massive, it's not even an ego thing. It's almost like a nutrient or a vitamin or a mineral. You just feel lacking when you're not performing or when you're not working towards this. Now, it may just be because we've been doing it for a long time and you just become accustomed to it, and we are perhaps addicted to it. And so we have withdrawal symptoms. But it's not even an ego boost, because I spend most of my time on stage concerned about technical elements. And it's only very rare that I get the chance to relax. And I certainly never let the ego come into it. So I'm not actually sure what it is that was instilled in me at such an early age that has left me with this plug that constantly needs to be filled in adult life. And I mean, I'm very grateful for how that came to be, because it was very much my mother pushing me when I was younger to go towards that. She never pushed me to do it. She said, you seem to have some form of aptitude towards this, so I'm going to do some research and work out and point you in the right direction for this to be something for you to explore and see what happens. And she was definitely a big reason as to why I'm doing this and why I am what I am. And I'm exceedingly grateful for that. And I think the home life that we have, and it sounds like you've had a similar thing, where the support isn't just from people going, oh, that's really good, but it's from people being excited about you discovering things yourself, being energetic and infused for you to do something like this, rather than saying that they're proud, because I don't think that necessarily helps. But I think having the energy themselves to go out of their way to spend their downtime helping you do this, or taking you to school on a Saturday, as it was for me, and things like that at an early age, to ensure that you have the best chance of either making something from it or discovering that you come to the end of a cul-de-sac. It's probably that really helped us become musicians, rather than any amount of encouragement, shall we say, or platitudes. It's quite an interesting thing when you really spend time thinking about it, as to where you ended up where you are, because it is often the smallest of gestures that enables you to follow that path.
It really is. There's a handful of decisions. Well, I mean, you could go as big or as small with this as you want, but there's things that happened years and years and years ago. That if you trace back, you're like, wow, that is the single thing that had I not done that then, I wouldn't be here now. You know, if I want to talk about where Tesseract are right now, we're working on album 5. I couldn't say that I'd be in this position or living in America if I hadn't received a small keyboard on my 3rd Christmas. You know,
and little things.
If I go
like
back that far, it comes down to that, because it was my parents nurturing something that they thought I may have, which turned out to be true. And offering kind of endless support. But what I think it's a lot more difficult if you haven't had that support, and especially, I mean, we're also lucky because the place we come from enables us, or at the moment at least, to fairly easily tour a large, fairly affluent part of the world. And it's far more difficult for bands in other places to get out there.
Even countries like Australia, it's insane how expensive it is for them to get out of Australia, and it's wonderful to think about how, like you say, how lucky we were that it even within the British scene, you can just skip out of Britain and go to France, for example, or you used to be able to for the whole of our lives, and that's all we've ever known. And some of even before we had released an album, I think we'd done shows in Holland and Germany,
Portugal,
yes, Portugal, 11 or 10 and a half years ago, or something like that. It's amazing, isn't it? Longer than that. That's was that our first?
It was Chaos Emergente Festival in Porto, or somewhere near Porto. It was a long time before one. I want to say that was probably 2008. I think we went to Chaos Emergente.
Yes, it was actually, because we had just played Bloodstock, like in August, and then I think in September we went to Portugal. Wow.
I remember feeling like that was the biggest thing ever, because up to that point it was, we were a band. I mean, I'd only ever known practice rooms and a couple of small UK shows with any band that I'd ever been in, and all of a sudden I was in a band that was going to Portugal to play a show. It's like, okay,
it's great, isn't it?
This is good. And then you get there and it's a basketball court with a stage, but it was great.
It was, it's amazing how there's a thing that's always very, it's a widely used phrase, which is in the financial markets, which is that a good trade pays off straight away. And it was odd with Tesseract because it was exactly the same. Our time and our effort that we put in immediately paid off in an international realm for us. It gave back so much instantly. And we've been kind of chasing the momentum ever since. And I think that's a sign of a good thing, that it was right place, right time. And hopefully we can just continue on the up. Without even having to make a massive leap in any point. We can just keep focusing upon what we do, how we do it, in a way that's sustainable, because our initial leap was enough to propel us onto the international scene in a way that an awful lot of bands struggle to capture for years in their career. So I think that's quite a fascinating, when you do look back and you look at the position we were in, and that it was almost things like a nascent, burgeoning internet community that created what we do, gave us the scene, and gave us and bands like Amoss Leaders and Periphery a chance to escape their local communities and have
It all happened at a very special time.
It did, yeah. Yeah, the timing was excellent. And I don't think anybody could have foreseen that, really. It was just something that bubbled up. It was great.
Yeah, I agree with that. Where... I'm just kind of going off on a bit of a tangent just because of where the conversation is going, but where... Do you want to talk at all about your vision for, let's say, the production vision of where you see this going? Because it's fair to say that out of everyone in Tess, you have your laser beam is focused very much so on production, stage production, the artistic production of the albums. You did the artwork for one, as far as I remember. It was all you.
Yeah.
You've found and commissioned the artists for Altered State and Polaris, and for Sonder you designed the solar system, the graphic for the front. Not necessarily thinking about album artwork, but in terms of like stage production. Where do you? What's your vision? Like, have you got a vision? Like, what would you like to see as an audience member at a Tesseract show?
Well, that's the exact approach, isn't it? When you come to a Tesseract show, I ask myself the question, what would I wish to see if I was in the audience? How would I feel that the show would complement the music? I mean, the audio is one thing. The audio is also something that is definitely, obviously, it's an integral part. And how we present that, and how the systems that we have that people can't see, how they are used, is also integral. But it's interesting that the production elements came about more through friendships that were developed whilst we were on tour. And then an interest in that opened up a part of my brain that really focused upon allowing the little things that I have moments of sparks that happen, and they create very vivid images very quickly. And it's a case of trying to get those down as quick as possible. This happens with music as well, and it drives me absolutely fucking mad, because it happens when I'm relaxing as well. So
yeah,
when I go to the shower, for example, I'll be in the shower and I've got no way of putting this down. And it's not even a case of writing it down, because it's like there's a whole song is in your head. And then by the time you've got sat down in front of the studio thing, it kind of starts to mush and kind of fades away and goes behind a screen a
Especially if you're not super fast.
Yes, totally.
With the with the workstation. That's my issue. As soon as I've got the idea, I'm like, okay, let's try and do this, and I try and get it down, and I do something wrong, and it's gone.
Yeah, and you're chasing the echo of a song that has already turned a corner, and it's just like, Christ, where's it gone? But yeah, the stage show is interesting because I've always pushed for us to reach further than we think we can, and for us to aim higher than we feel we should be aiming for, because simply put, we will then, even if we don't get there and we drop by about 20-30% in our evaluation of it, it will still be pretty intense because we're firing quite high in the first place. I also feel that there's something about the music that it lends itself to a show, a theatrical show almost, something that is bigger and greater than what we could do if we were just on stage. I mean, now that I've said that, it sounds a little belittling, but I don't mean it like that. I don't mean that
I know what you mean.
Gigs aren't interesting, but I feel that after you've performed a certain amount of gigs, you want to really push a different side of yourself. And it was the friendship with Mike St. Jean of Devin Townsend Project fame that got me interested in working with video. Now, it was one of our first tours in the US, and it was in like the third week of the tour. I spent a night on their bus, and that night was actually spent with me and Mike just chatting, just exploring technology for some reason, because we both realized we were both somewhat geeky and that we found these things interesting. And I was already looking at how we could make our system very small and control everything from a sequencer, because that was my educational background. And he was showing me these things that he was doing the same, but with video. And it was a very early age of video at that point as well. And this has just expanded and spiraled out of control. And throughout the years, we've spent pretty much every day just sharing ideas with each other, to the point now that these have become the things that we wish to action upon and visualize things that we will then go, oh my God, that would be awesome if we could pull that off, regardless of whether or not it's artistically has merit. We almost are getting to the point where we want to do things that are a technical challenge. Like our last, the Sonder production, was fairly intriguing. It was about trying, the concept was to try and make the show larger than the venue, and to take away your memory of the venue and replace it with the memory of Tesseract. So the boundaries of the venue disappear. And I think in many respects we did that, because speaking to people, audience members, they've said, I've never seen this venue look like that, or I couldn't imagine that you could have done that with the space that you had.
Yeah.
And now
it's an odd...
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it's an odd thing being our side of this as well when you're on stage, because I've seen videos and images of the shows that appear on Instagram or wherever the next day, and you're like, wow, that looks great.
Yeah.
And then, and especially the festivals that we did last summer with the contrasting backdrop, that kind of trippy looking thing. Yeah. It just looks fantastic. But from our side, it looks the same. You're blinded occasionally by a light. It's a very odd thing, but I'd love for there to be some interaction with things on stage. And I'd definitely like to, not to inflate a head, but I'd like to create something of the drum riser, as the drums are the only thing on stage.
Yeah.
To do something with that, I think would be fantastic.
That's also part of the reason why we have why we push our production, because of the way that we approach our audio elements. Everything's off stage except for performers, and in your case, your instrument is there in front on stage at all times. So it creates, it forces us to do something as well, which is quite interesting. Which I love invention being necessity being the mother of invention. I love that having a reason to do something because there's a shortfall forces you to be creative and find those things. And yeah, I mean, as we get further and further into this, we're going to find more and more interesting ways of creating a stage setup that could easily be doing something interesting with the drums. And we've already tried to, we're flipping it at an edge.
The Diamond Riser was cool.
Just to give it something slightly different. But doing that as well gave us another shape to play with, another part of the stage to play with, because we now have a different shaped stage to other bands. So it's quite interesting that these things, as you sculpt something, there's a knock-on effect. And particularly when you take something away, sometimes the space is larger than you intended. Like us not having any cabs on stage. All of a sudden we have this big empty space, but that big empty space is a really intriguing dark canvas to paint upon. And I love it. I love having that space. It makes our show look bigger in a weirdly counterintuitive way, especially on a performance on an outdoor stage in the middle of the day. It's really weird. Like if you get the backdrop right, all of a sudden you look bigger than the band that had an inflatable skeleton
tank
on, or something like that. Yeah. We've just named two bands without naming two bands. No, I really wasn't shit talking about them. I found it interesting.
It was crazy. I mean, some of the production that these bands take out,
it's phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Literally, I can't remember the band now. Sabaton, was it?
Yeah, I mean, look at Sabaton. They put a fucking World War II trench plus a tank.
A tank on stage. The drum riser is a tank.
Yeah, it's piss funny.
That's amazing. It's so good.
A monomarth.
How do you up a tank?
A monomarth have a Viking boat.
A Viking ship.
They also have two massive statues that get rolled on stage. That's amazing. I mean, it's kind of funny, but I want to do something like that. I want it to be a theatre show. If you ever go to the West End in London or even, say, Broadway in New York, and you see a show that has some form of animatronics or something, it's incredible. And in fact, there's one particular effect. There's you've heard of the show Wicked. There's this incredible lighting effect that they do where they spray water. So there's like a mist above the stage and they fire a projector into that. And it's magic. It's absolute magic. And for a good 5 minutes, I had no idea what they were doing. And then kind of figured it out. But I would love to do stuff like that, because we could then create holograms.
That'd be huge.
Yeah, it's just incredible. Really cool.
One day.
Yeah. Money.
Money. Yeah, if anyone's listening to this that is rich, we can definitely make use of your money.
Yes.
And you'll get guest list for life, and we'll send you a couple of free t-shirts. There you go. So, okay. Something that I like to tell something I like to tell people who ask me for advice when they're starting a band. So they're right at the start, or maybe they've just come out of a band or it wasn't working for them or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that the world is a very small place, and the more that my experience of it, the more that we've toured and seen these places and made friends in all of these places, you're only ever basically an in-flight meal and a couple of movies away from a tour or seeing your friends on the other side of the world. It really does shrink the world. Is there anything that you'd say to any creative person, whether it's a artist or someone trying to start a band that's at the start of their path, really, or maybe actually designing it for the musician, someone that's looking to start a new project, what advice, if any, would you give to someone at that stage?
Never chase a scene, if that makes sense. Don't try to be... Well, this is a weird one, because you should always, especially with music, you should do what you enjoy. And if what you enjoy is embracing a particular scene of music, fantastic. That's really cool. But never try to become a part of something. Never do something or make decisions about your music to fit with a current trend, because it's a short-term investment for you. It's one of those things that it may pay off immediately, but it's a long plank. It's a short plank you're walking off, basically, if you do that. And you're not going to necessarily develop something that will last you for a career, which is your own voice. Now, your own voice may not attract that much attention at the start, but if you just keep going, especially with the way things are now, with there's a democratic dissemination of music now. It's available to everybody. So you may end up having fans 10,000 miles away, and you're doing what you love in a fashion that is sustainable and will generate a career, rather than chasing something that will have no fan base in 12 months' time. But the other side of that is, if you enjoy that chase and it's what you really want to do, then you should probably consider doing that as well. It's a really tough thing, but my own personal belief is that your own voice will take you further, will give more back to you, and will cultivate more happiness in the long run. Yeah.
I think focusing on what it is that you enjoy, and especially I'm discovering this even in the last year or so, is that creativity in any shape, way or form, if you make time for it, the dividend that you get back from it is far more than you put in. Like it nurtures something very, very deep. And I was only talking to you guys the other day about this. The way that Tesseract works historically, really, is Ackle puts down the lump of music, and then for me that includes drums, and then I learn the stuff that he's put down and just try to humanize it. And because of that, there's been an element of kind of, for want of a better word, imposter syndrome. I'm playing these drums that a computer has played, and it's therefore almost an impossible task. But in trying to, like, in learning the album 5 stuff so far, and trying to get my head around even some of the older songs that we haven't played on stage before, reinventing some of those parts and getting more familiar with the like Cubase and the tools that can turn this drum kit behind me into music for you guys. Like, if I just go down that rabbit hole and put time aside, a couple of hours a day into doing something like that, the fog clears very, very quickly. And I think if people were to spend more time focusing on the creative side of what they enjoy and putting that out to the world, and less necessarily on trying to make it make money for them in the short term because they want to quickly get out of a situation that isn't desirable, like working a job that you don't like or whatever. You you have to, at the beginning of anything creative, it's a long play. Like, it's definitely something that you're going to do, well, hopefully something that you're going to do for a long time. And in our case, it's something that we have been doing for a long time. You know, Tesseract's coming up on how many years now? Like 13 years together, I think.
Yeah. Actually, I think it's 15, which is fucked. And we started doing shows in 2007, I think.
Yeah.
And
wow.
Without being flippant or without being too cliche, it has flown by. It's intriguing that this journey did kind of start with us all doing things that we liked, and then we hit this bump where we did kind of chase things a little. And I feel that
probably because it was all very new and it seemed oh wow, this is a huge opportunity.
Well, I guess we wanted to be a part of what our peers and friends were doing as well. Yeah, it's certainly the bands that we wanted to emulate were doing things that aren't naturally what we do, which is intriguing. The things that we do really well are surprisingly uncool, but they're very rewarding, and they're very detailed and deep, and it's I wish we'd listened to the uncool dude at the back of the room sometimes who's going, that's really interesting, It doesn't matter.
That's a really bad way to talk about our sound engineer.
It's don't worry about whether or not the crowd are slam dancing, as the kids say. It's, you just go for it. Just enjoy that introverted, introspected music that you're playing, because it's going to take you a lot further.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I mean, we talk about this, after pretty much every show, there's always a bit of a debrief once people have got bored checking their phones, of like, everyone's like, how was that for you? How's that for you? And everyone has a different reaction, but that kind of thing, we all very rarely agree that it was either an amazing show from our perspective, not talking about crowds, but from our perspective, the energy going through us during that show was either high or low or somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And it's very rare that we all say that was amazing, or that was terrible. It's very rare that it's always terrible, that it's terrible, to be fair. But one thing that is true is that regardless of what the crowd or how the crowd is reacting, you can enjoy the show. If you're playing in some areas in Europe, not naming names, you can name names if you like. Some of the crowds are quiet.
Yeah.
Some of them like to stand there
Belgium.
And witness the Belgium. There you go.
Yeah,
they like to witness the show.
But the thing is, it's odd at our level with our type of music. So it's funny. You can't just broad stroke a whole country, because it's
like we just did.
Yeah. We should probably expect that the thing that we loved about performing when we were younger, which was having a crazy wild crowd, is not the thing that our crowds probably are now. Now, they definitely are in some countries, but for example, in Belgium, they're normally quite nuts. It's just the people that want to see us. They want to enjoy the show in their way, and then they'll clap after and really come up to you and say that it was the most incredible thing ever. It's just that they don't lose their shit in the pit.
Yeah, that's really it. I went to see Periphery and Pliny when they came through Austin the other week, and it was at Emos.
Awesome.
They've played there a couple of times. Really good venue. They've done some more with the acoustics in there. Like, there's really cool stuff for either side of the stage now. And I mean, the energy's high throughout most of the show, especially Periphery's performance, as you might imagine.
Definitely, yeah.
But the the section of the crowd that are doing the you know, the crazy energetic stuff, there are more people in the venue on the periphery that are watching. I was watching. You know, I was there with Bailey and a couple of friends, and we were watching the show, and I could honestly say it would be my worst nightmare being in the middle of the mosh pit. I can't imagine anything worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great, but I think it's very easy for a band to perform for the first 10 rows when in fact the majority of the iceberg of the audience is the other 1,800 people that are in the venue. So perhaps you have to try and get a good balance. I mean, yes, it's fun in getting that bounce of energy back from those people, but you're forgetting the people in the darkness out there.
Yeah.
You know, the majority of the audience have come to see something different, to watch something, to listen to something, and become, in our case, become a transcendental goat and trip out whilst listening to our music. If you're that
I'd
person,
love to be a transcendental goat.
if you're that person in the audience that zones out completely, I promise you, we will all notice you and we will all talk about you after. Not because we're taking the piss, it's just because it's really interesting. I find it really fascinating that you've got this super loud music. I mean, obviously we try wherever possible to make things sound good, but it's still pretty loud and you're just zoning out and you look like you're off your face. And it's amazing.
Maybe they are off their face.
True, perhaps
there's a good chance that people that are the goat they've taken something to open the goat gate at the start of the show. That's probably what's happened. But I mean, there's a mixed reaction, or there are mixed reactions from the crowd during the show. I mean, there'll be people cry, which is
it's hard to not understand, but it's difficult, isn't it? Because you don't know how to react in many cases. So it is.
I think. Yeah. Maybe it is just an accumulation of the things we were talking about earlier. I mean, we've been very fortunate to work with the very talented sound engineers who managed to get even, the places that haven't got top-notch PAs to sound pretty good.
Completely.
I mean, there's very few of those these days, but they do still manage to make the best of the situation with the PA systems. And then add that, or combine that with the lighting design that we've had and the music, and it's probably quite a decent experience for folks that maybe don't go to shows like this very often.
I hope so, and I hope we can keep pushing that envelope so people walk away from it and go, I didn't even think that was possible. That's really cool. You've given me something to enjoy on a visceral, emotional and energetic level, but you've also just given me a treat for my senses totally. And that's where I really want to take everything. I want to be the band that you talk about. You go, wow, did you see that show? Simply for the reason of it feels like an artistic achievement. And like I was talking about earlier, the technical achievement of actually pulling that off is very rewarding. And you realize that hard work pays off. The method behind it and the discipline to create that show over and over again is something to aspire to for me personally.
I like that. I also like that we've got a brand new t-shirt design, the Transcendental Goat, which you'll be able to pick up very soon, I'm sure, on Tesseract's merch store. What would you consider to be the most difficult aspect of doing this? It can be anything.
There financially, it can be quite difficult from a point of view of instability. It can be very hard for a lot of musicians at our level to balance everything and to experience a normal life with a family. I think that could be one of the hardest things. Another thing is also realizing that your life is not everybody else's life, and it can be quite hard to slot yourself back in to a life when you're off tour. I see a lot of our friends struggling with the effects of this, so they end up mentally a little frayed. They suffer from depression when they're off tour, and it can be quite hard not being able to help them in any more fashion than just saying, "Hey, are you okay? The thing's shit today." And that's sometimes being those 3 little grey dots on Messenger are really important for people when you're actually typing back. When somebody's said something to you, or even just on WhatsApp, whatever. Just being a voiceless set of photons seem to really help people. So I think perhaps the instability of finances and general mental well-being are probably the toughest things to deal with.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've gone there, because that's literally the next kind of the question that I'd got after this. Because I agree completely with what you just said, by the way, that your answer would have mirrored mine, but I'd have probably said it less eloquently. The financial instability is the big one, because you never really know what's going to happen. Like even when we're given we're given a projection at the beginning of something, and it can be vastly up or vastly down at the end, and there's no way of doing that until you've spent those 1, 2, 3 months away doing it. Which in the meantime, you're fully in this thing. You're not. You can't really juggle. I mean, we've tried. James does it very well with his business, and I've tried to do it before, but doing something on tour that isn't the tour doesn't enable you any time to recover. No. So it's a very difficult thing to try and spin all these plates. It's something that I've discussed on the podcast before, but the importance of like physical and mental health on the road and off the road. It's not exclusive to that, but that's become something in the last couple of years for me, which is so much more important than it's ever been at any other point in my life. I can't really tell you why. It's just crept up on me in the last couple of years, and I have to do things like meditation and some kind of light exercise and some kind of creative thing and reading. There's all these things that I do now which help to just get through that and clear the fog, for want of a better word. Can you speak to that at all? Is there any solutions that you've found, or any... Oh, sorry. Wow, Siri just told me that she speaks any languages. That's good. Thanks, Siri. That's awesome.
Nice.
Thanks for jumping in. But yeah, is there anything, any rituals that you have on or off the road that help you? Anything that you enjoy that takes you out of the moment if you're feeling particularly shit?
On tour, I have to create one element of routine because everything else is not routine. Now, often that'll be me, and quite often somebody who's not in the band will go off and find somewhere for coffee. And the process of doing that allows you to escape the chaos for even half an hour. and you become very focused just on that. It also means that you see a little bit of where you are, because it's quite peculiar to get off the bus, turn up at a venue, and that's all you see. There are so many cities around this world that I've been to, but I've never experienced. Yeah. So it's really nice to, even if it means you get out of bed before you feel ready, which is every day for me. I'll be up like 2 hours before everybody else, and we'll go somewhere for coffee, like myself and Mike, for example, often LD, or when Aidan was with us, we'd go out and find coffee, or like our tour manager recently. And it's really an essential part of decompressing before you then throw yourself in and just focused, very, very focused on everything throughout the day working. It's essential to have that, especially time off the bus or time away from the airport.
Yeah, time off the bus.
Yeah, just
the only thing you want is a tour bus when you're a band that is traveling around in cars and vans that smell of the last band that was in them. You're like, oh man, I want a bus. And then when you've got a bus, I mean, yes, you want the bus as your, I need to not be in this venue for a little while, and it's raining outside, and I can sleep on this thing. This is nice. But getting off that bus in the morning, you're dead right. That is so good for you to not be on that bus. Yeah, it is odd though. The thing that you think is like, because getting a bus for me was like, it was a huge stage in our career. I felt like, when you bus touring, that's massive, and then kind of like the rest of it, it all feels like the childhood dream, for want of a better word. When one of these things happens, you've immediately ticked this box, which once you've done makes no difference. You know what I mean? It doesn't make you feel a different way once you've done it. You're no different before and afterwards. You're just continuing, and that's, I don't know, I guess that's one of the things that I kind of have. I don't know if that's been something that I've struggled with a bit, where I think that I have done what I thought this was. Not implying that I'm leaving Tesseract here, by the way. I'm not leaving Tesseract. But it's.
I've had very similar things. You remember the Prog Awards where we won the Best New Band thing? I remember I was speaking to Barley from
Basic
Records and various other things that he's got on. And I mentioned to him, as like, so these are all the career things that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have toured internationally, won an award, had some videos out. And I was like, okay, great. Now I've only got musical and creative accomplishments. This is really cool. But then I sorely regretted thinking that, because I realized quite quickly that if I wanted this to be a career, there were lots of other things behind the scenes that are completely non-rock and roll that you need to accomplish to make this a life instead of a half-life. And so it becomes all your emotional and physical investment becomes concrete in giving you a life and a wage and giving your family that hope and paying them back for all the time that you spend away from them. So We've
got very patient families.
Yes, yeah. But it is always the hidden things that are have the real impact in your life, musical life, I should say.
Yeah, I agree. Let's take things in a lighter direction, because I'm twisting things into like, oh my God, it's the worst being in the music industry. It's really not. You get to see the world, even if you do see it through closed eyes most of the time.
Yeah.
But you get to meet friends everywhere, and that is the crazy thing. You know, I'm not halfway around the world, quarter of the way around the world from you guys. Yet a bunch of my buddies rolled through town the other day, and I got to go and see them. And for that night, it was exactly the same as if I was on tour.
Yep.
It's the same feelings come. You know, it's just it's a feeling. It's a nice feeling. So I'd like to try and recall for our fans, because I can't do this with anyone else, other than members of Tesseract, some of the most fun and ridiculous experiences that you can remember.
I'm not good at
on
this.
and off the road.
I really don't remember the fun rock and roll crazy times, because I look back at them as fucking ashamed, you know. And it's like,
I mean,
there's things that are funny, but I don't know. I tend to keep certain things in a crystalline memory, which are to do with experiencing nature, and it happened to be whilst we were on tour together, and that's something that I'm going to hold with me for a very long time, because it clearly speaks a lot about what's important to me, and experiencing as much of this tiny little mote of dust that we call home as possible before I have to leave it. So it's the little things like that are really cool. You know, things like the Grand Canyon, and
that's top of the list.
It's
so
up
good.
there, and it's going to stay there. It's the funny, crazy things are kind of, sorry to be boring, but they're funny and they're crazy there and then. And I swear I've forgotten most of them, and I need somebody to poke my memory for me to then go, I recollect that. That's quite cool, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of them for me are honestly from the earlier years of international touring, and it's not even so much funny stories as it is they were very new experiences, so they're etched kind of deeper into my memory. The memories of the bandwagon touring and bus touring, they blend into one bigger memory, one overall memory of time, rather than a specific, unless there was a night where it was like, oh, do you remember this place where this happened? And then some of those memories get recalled. But touring in that tiny van on the first US tour, coming and picking, I think it was you, James, and Dan, and Christelle, I think, up from the Vancouver.
Seattle? Was it Seattle?
No, it was somewhere on the west. Me and Ackle had flown into LA, and we were driving up the west coast towards Vancouver. And I don't know if it was Vancouver or if it was. I don't know if you did the border with us or not, but I remember.
I don't remember. Yeah, that's weird.
Like that tour, just piling into
some great
a single
times.
Motel 6, having to line up. Like,
well, that was brilliant. Though. I think that was Washington, and we actually stood in a line. How do you convince somebody that you're one person? And there were 6 of us. We got the one key, and then all kind of fanned out like the many arms of Shiva. And it was just like, what the hell? It was just nuts.
It's the only way, though. There was like, I think we were getting like $150 a night or something. Yeah. And it's like, try and make this tour work, so we're going to get the cheapest motel we can because we're not sleeping in this van. And literally to do that, we'd get one room. And I mean, but those memories for me, I've got literal memories of like pumping up airbeds on motel floors, and it's.
But it's a element of camaraderie. It's trench.
Yeah.
The community spirit, bonding as you're going through hardship, but you're all experiencing it together, and again overcoming what we saw as unsurmountable odds at the time, which was driving across a continent. But then now that is every day, you know.
Although we're not driving.
No, well, this is the good thing. Yeah.
That was, although it was an experience, I mean, we drove ourselves 3 times. We did first tour with Devin Townsend, second tour was Protest, which was a much longer tour. It was like 8 weeks.
Yes, that was nuts.
And then the Between the Boat and Me tour, we were in an RV. And I mean, all of those are amazing experiences, and I'll hold them close forever.
Yeah.
But now we're in a bandwagon. We obviously don't drive ourselves. So the one thing, though, with not driving yourself is you miss out on a lot of the amazing scenic drives. You know, when you're in the
country like the US, where between cities is phenomenal. It's
or it can be.
Yes, yeah.
The drive from Austin to North Carolina at Christmas was a little bit drab. It was a lot of
what about all the barbecue
and
spots
Cracker
you could
Barrels
have joined when stopped on routes, you know?
Tell you what, there's some funny looking places and some very questionable billboards on that drive.
Yeah, I love it when you come out of Florida and enter Georgia, and the billboards are just fucking nuts. You know, it's just like, okay, 1-800-Jesus. All right, then let's go for that one.
Yep, let's give Jesus a call. But I've just got a lot of fun memories of those early years, and a lot of very crystal clear images of very drunken band members, and including myself. I mean, the ones of myself were a little bit more blurry, but yeah. Okay, well, I do a little bit of a quick fire round during these podcasts because I think it's fun. It normally gets really stupid, and
that's fine.
I've made a shorter list on this because I think these are kind of relevant and not too stupid.
Cool. Sounds good.
So, and you can go into detail. They don't have to be one-word answers. So here we go. What is your dream tour? Alive or dead?
Well, it's quite funny because I had 2 conversations going on in my head. The one voice was talking about the bands that I wanted to tour with, and the other voice was talking about it being financially successful. Which is
I imagine that finances aren't a part of it, and that we have a money tree.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it would be going on tour with bands that I grew up listening to, I think. And I think mainly because I don't get out to see what's going on at the moment. So the most contemporary band that's impressed me recently would be Gojira. And I can't say that I've seen many other bands at the moment. So that's the cool thing about festivals, by the way, because you get to see some other cool bands. In terms of what would be a great bill, you know, it's surprising. I'd like to go out with some pop bands and some. I would love to have been on tour with Prince, for example. That would have been amazing. But also, you know, bands like Deftones would be amazing. I'd just enjoy it every night. I'd enjoy watching the music every night. That was something that was great about that Devin Townsend tour. I enjoyed watching Devin every night. It was something new. Then
he's a different comedian every night, which is amazing.
It's fun to be that entertained by your work. It's intriguing. So yeah, I'd love to go out with, say, Tool, Deftones, Rammstein, Prince. Yeah, maybe Meshuggah as well because they're fun every night. I'm trying to think.
I could watch them every night.
Yeah, it would be cool. Maybe somebody like Bjork as well, though, because the stage show is incredible, and it would be a batshit festival tour, but it would be fun for me. And we'd be on first, so we could then relax and enjoy everybody else.
Yeah. Good answer. Shanghai or Hitchin?
Shanghai.
Primitivo or Chateauneuf-du-Pape?
Primitivo.
Gersboon Mariage Parfait or Rodenbach Grand Cru?
Probably Rodenbach because it's a more chilled drink. Mariage Parfait is... You can't do it all night. Well, I can't anymore. It fucks you up. So let's go for the Rodenbach Grand Cru.
It's basically champagne, that's why. It's
that's true.
Messed up stuff. 4 strings or 5 strings?
I kind of like 4 at the moment. I'm really enjoying 4 strings. They're kind of cool. If I had to choose 4.
Okay. What's your bass at the moment that you're playing?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I've been working with company, and we've been designing something new, which is interesting. I've been speaking with them, and it's a prototype, and we'll see how that comes out. I'm kind of committed to it because I enjoy playing the other things that I've got from them, but at the same time, I'm not committing to it until there's a prototype finished.
That's fair enough.
It's more for them as well. They want to get it right. But I'm having the most fun playing out old music with these basses. It's really cool, really exciting for me to sit down and to walk away from a practice session with a big smile on my face.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that. I've been really enjoying
must
jamming
awesome
lament.
With the V kit.
Oh man, it's fantastic. My experience of electronic kits before, a couple of years ago, I got to try a Roland TD25 during a session that I did with Toon Track, and that was great.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, wow, this is leagues ahead of the things that I'd played in the past. Which was, I think it was a very, very old Roland or Yamaha kit that I had years and years and years ago, basically to learn the Tesseract stuff back in the day. And I have been fortunate that Roland wanted to work with me, so they've given me a nice deal on this kit behind me, which is a TD50 KV, which is kind of their flagship kit, and it's just a beast.
It's awesome.
It's the closest I've come to acoustic kit, the feel of an acoustic kit, and I think that's mainly due to the things being a bit more of a realistic size, for want of a better word, because like the snare's 14 inches. You know, that's a snare. That's my snare.
Yeah.
The toms are 10 and 12 inches. The ride cymbal's 18. You know, it's a big kit,
That's awesome.
but it takes up a much smaller amount of space, obviously, than a real kit, and it's a lot quieter. But it's enabling me to play stuff into the computer, do live streams,
I'm also,
just stuff that I couldn't do.
I don't know if this is something you've thought about, but I'm really intrigued by the acoustic possibilities of implementing and augmenting a live drum kit with not just a pad, but you could have like a second snare that's just the Roland one, or or even like a particular. If we have samples that we know work well, like sounds, like you're not just triggering a sample, but actually playing a pattern. You know, we could have 1 or 2 pads. I'm just really interested in the concept of having augmenting the drum kit.
Yeah. Roland would love that as well. When I first started talking to them, one of the main areas of conversation was around hybrid kits. So, you know, people
exactly
use a bit of both.
Hybrid,
I'd honestly need to work with the rest of you guys, probably specifically you, really, to visualize and realize the application of it, because the way that it's always worked for me is acoustic drums and Tesseract, and my knowledge of the tech side of things is limited. You know, I've not really dug down that rabbit hole very far, which has caused me months worth of technical issues with trying to do live streams.
Yeah, totally.
But I'd be up for trying to realize a way of using this. It'd be fantastic to use both live. Might need a drum tech if we're going to start doing that kind of stuff.
Need one anyway.
Conversation. Need one anyway.
Yeah, it's at the point where maintenance is vitally important, and you know, it's not even about having somebody do stuff for you. It's about having an expert ensuring that your instrument is as good as it can be each day. That's really especially with like, you can almost get away with it with drums in some sense. You can't. I feel that you have to spend a lot of time on a snare drum each day. I think that's vitally important. Guitars, just the electrics alone start to degrade if you don't look after it every day, which is something we are guilty of, and it just means that stuff starts to get damaged, and you're halfway through a tour and your cymbals are cracked, or because there was a rush to put them away, or I don't know, just something you didn't notice happens to a mechanical element and it falls apart. And then it's good to have somebody that's their job. Your job is to play and play well, and their job is to help you do that by looking after your instrument. It's not big-headed or anything like that, and I think that's probably an attitude that we need to overcome a little. If we've got the money to do it, there's a reason why that job is there.
Yeah. Give me 2 seconds. I really need a piss. I'm glad we're not doing this live. I'm going to leave everything going.
Sure.
Shoes or no shoes?
No shoes.
Any reason?
I had another one of those moments where there were two conversations. For some reason...
Financial and...
For some reason, some part of my head just went, it just feels better. And then the other side of my head went, that sounds like you're talking about condoms. And it's just like, what the hell? Come on.
And then we've got our soundbite for the podcast right there.
Fair enough.
Noel Edmonds or Hugh Grant?
Hugh Grant, because he's fucking funny on Twitter. If you... He's a man of the people, for sure. He's a champion of the people, I should say. I'm sure he's an idiot in all of his special ways, being a famous film star and that, but he's also a bit of a privacy champion, obviously. And I think he's done a lot for politics at the moment, for helping spread quite a good word online. And it was unexpected to see that. And a bit like James Bond, he's a bit of an arse, but he's quite funny online, and it allows you to see a different side of things that are questions you may not ask yourself.
Hugh Grant visited Cannock a few times for political rally type things.
A rally?
It was hilarious.
Cannock? What for?
Well, I don't know.
Better not be Britain.
I didn't ever
first.
go, but it was... Oh, man. Yeah, imagine that. Japanese or Italian food?
Both at the same time. It can be done.
I'd do that. Or both on the same day at least.
Yes, for sure.
Top or bottom bunk?
Always as top as possible. I don't know why. It's just weird. I have to. I can't sleep when I'm beneath somebody's other bunk. Really don't know what it is. Mind you, to be fair, I can't sleep on a fucking bus anyway most of the time.
Do you remember that bunk on the Between the Buried and Me tour, the first one that we did with Elliot? you had the bunk that was like above the driver's cab on that RV,
that was
and
rough.
it kept on leaking and then freezing, like the water would freeze on the inside of the.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
That was weird. That one. Yeah, it's there was a bottle of water by my head that had frozen solid at one point when we were in Canada.
Oh man,
just insane. And when you think about it, all that was between the cab and outside was a sheet of metal like that. It was you were basically outside, and that was thick.
Yeah. I remember seeing there was a photo or a few photos of those same exact RVs that we had on that tour that Silosis took out on tour, and their driver crashed it because they were trying to, I think someone in front of them swerved out of the way, but they were about to collide with this thing that was parked, like an 18-wheeler, and unfortunately the driver's side was okay because he would have just been killed, but the passenger side completely caved in, and that bunk area that you were in just gone.
Yeah.
And all of the guys suffered some injuries from that. But yeah, that's not a concern sometimes on tour. But I think the drivers that we work with now, or the companies that we work with now, I've got way more confidence in. Yeah. I go to sleep rather than waking up airborne, worried that I'm like going off the edge of a bridge somewhere. Neve or SSL?
I'm more comfortable with SSL's top end, but Neve can be more fun because I feel like you have to work harder to hide your shit tone. I feel like they show you more of what you're putting into it, whereas in my experience with SSLs, they're really good at giving you a more hi-fi sound. I don't know if we're working with, maybe if we're mixing, SSL is more fun, and if we're tracking, Neve is better, I think, in my limited experience anyway.
Your limited experience is far more vast than mine. So you have two choices: no wine allowed for 1 year, or no coffee allowed for 1 year.
I can do without wine.
Yeah?
Easily.
You'd have the coffee. But where you're living now, where wine is on tap...
I've discovered I dislike French wine.
Oh, no!
It's all really metallic. But the region that we're in, it's volcanic, so it's just heavy iron deposits everywhere. And it means... there are some fantastic wines, but they're very expensive. So the majority of wines that we're having are just not our taste. So we drink more Italian wine, for example, or Portuguese or Spanish wine.
Fair enough. Those are my short little questions that I've got for you. I haven't asked you any bunch, like a stupid long list of pointless, would you rather eat crayons or chalk or anything weird like that. So the last thing really is if there was anything, one message that you could get out to the entire world, everyone would read it, hear it, see it, whatever, everyone gets it, what would the message be?
I've discovered, or I've found that it's far more successful and interesting to not dwell upon what people do, but why they do it. Or what people say, but why they're saying it. To sum it up, I think there'll be somebody smart from the past probably said something like, That's a thread I can't even think about. I can't remember. I had a quote on the tip of my tongue, but it's decided to disappear in the black hole of my brain at the moment. So yeah,
happens with me all the time.
Don't focus on what, but why.
It's fair enough.
Very contrived.
I like it. That's your answer. It's a nice one. Okay. Well, before I go and carry on with my day and you carry on with your evening, what's little is left of it, is there anything else that you'd like to share? Any words that might help people along their path, or anything you'd like to promote or mention at all?
No, just thank you for everybody's attention and enthusiasm for not just what I do, but what myself and my family have been doing, which is fantastic. It's very encouraging to know that the hard work means, it's not even that it means something deep to people, that it just entertains people, that it's really cool that is a thing for other people in their life, that the noise that we make and the art that we make is of interest to other people is amazing. So thank you for that. I will always be eternally grateful for that. And I can't wait to make some more noise and draw some more scribbles, and hopefully they will be as interesting and will mean as much to you as they did to me when I was creating them, or when I was a part of the creation process.
That's great. I like that a lot.
Cool.
Well, brother, mon frère, thank you for joining me.
It's fine. It's a pleasure. Should work out more things like this. They're good fun.
Yeah, I enjoy doing these. It's a nice little break in my day to do something kind of creative.
Yeah.
Just catching up with people, because we catch up all the time in the Tesseract Facebook conversation, but we very rarely get on actual calls, video calls with each other, and look at each other's beautiful faces when we're not on tour. So,
cool,
right.
Well, enjoy Texas. I hope everything's safe and sound over there. There's some crazy shit going on about 1,000 miles north of you at the moment with tornadoes and that, but I saw that. I think you're nice and safe in Texas, actually, especially where you are in Austin. Yeah. I think it's quite sheltered. So
yeah, it should be all right.
Yeah, man. Keep safe.
Cool.
Well, I'll see you on the American continent soon. In a couple of weeks.
Au revoir.